Hey, right over there.
Lupe, go!
Back up. What's up? Go. Go back up. Go back up. You're gonna get bit by the dog because you're in the way. Not a concern right now.
They're doing too
Stay
much.
back over there.
They doing too much.
Yeah, they're doing all that. They don't have to do all that.
Put all of that shit.
You don't know what's going on. Stand back over there.
I'm lying.
I don't have to. It's free.
I'm lying. No, they're doing
Hey, get back. You can watch all you want over
Don't
there.
touch me.
I'm not touching you.
Don't touch me.
Go
Get out
stand
my
over
face.
there.
Get the fuck out my face. Get out my face.
You're interfering with the... Get away! Copper, that's it. That's it.
She is a minor! 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 That's my niece. She is a minor!
New body cam video tonight released by the NYPD of a confrontation between an officer and a young woman in Harlem.
It comes after viral cell phone video showed an arrest that turned violent Tuesday.
Cam videos released by the NYPD show the chaos during the arrest of 22-year-old Elvin James, wanted in connection for an attempted murder. The NYPD says he had a loaded semi-automatic ghost gun on him and was grabbing for his waistband. 19-year-old Tamani Crum walks up to James. From this angle, you see her interaction with the officer. She falls backward to the ground. Here's a different angle. This was the cell phone video that went viral, taken just before 5 p.m. Tuesday on West 136th Street, prompting some residents to call for an investigation into the NYPD. The NYPD says Crum interfered with the arrest, quote, striking one of the officers. That officer fended off that interference and struck the woman with an open hand. Wednesday night, Crum pleaded not guilty to that charge and was released on her own recognizance. Her attorney said he was pleased the district attorney decided not to charge her with assaulting an officer or resisting arrest, but
he absolutely used excessive force. We're talking about a 19-year-old young girl versus a grown man who was approximately 3 times her body weight and size.
Mayor Eric Adams, a former NYPD officer, responded to the video.
Those officers showed great restraint. They didn't discharge their weapons. They subdued him. While they were subduing him, a crowd came and attempted to disrupt the arrest.
He says there's an investigation into what happened, but
if you look at the video, the young lady was inches away from the person who was armed with that gun. That action endangered those police officers.
We cannot have officers demand and create their own policy when they are on the street. We will not have it.
This officer is wrong. He should have never ever have knocked my daughter down that way. And he's gonna have to pay for this.
Crum is charged currently with resisting arrest and obstruction.
I want to give all the praises and the honor to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh, and double honors to the elder apostles and even the elder bishops of Great Millstone. Honors as well to you brethren, you fellow believers of this truth. Shalom to the elect. So I noticed something in the string of videos that's been happening with Eve and the mindset and the lack of accountability, a lack of discipline, right? And just a lack of humanity. I mean, if that's the best way to put it. There is zero control from Eve. Zero fear from Eve. And you all know who I'm talking about when I say Eve. So anyway, the first clip is the young woman who was in the middle of an arrest or impeding an officer who was making an arrest, what they call interfering with an arrest. And this young woman came out and said something of the nature, "You don't have to do it like that." So now, with all the cameras, and then, you know, with all the cell phones, now the cameras, the officers now have cameras on them to show how they're making arrests. Now, rightfully so. And what's happening is, from all the injustice police have done, now the public just don't have trust in the police. So now they're swarming out and attacking police, but at the same time they're taking the public, and let me say Eve, and even our people, the young men, now anytime there's an arrest made or something they don't like, they're taking advantage of the misfortune of the so-called police department and their so-called injustices. So you're seeing a clash on both sides. But my main point in this video is Eve. Now, look at the titles. This is what I'm going to show you, right? NYPD releases body cam of officer punching woman in face. And see, the media is partly responsible for this, right? Because he never punched her. He smacked her, number one, or pushed her. And number two, NYPD released a body cam of them being assaulted by the woman first. Now, I even left a comment a while, you know, when this actually happened, and I said, well, the NYPD gets to smack, you know, Eve around, but Eve smacks us, we can't smack them back. And of course, the simp gets on there and say, well, that's the law, deal with it. Right? What do you think we've been dealing with? Okay, we've been dealing with this madness and the injustices in this place in general. So really, this is both sides unfolding on itself, and we're just sitting back watching it happen. But again, look at the video. Woman hit by detective during NYC arrest. And see, the media is the one help amplify the situation, and they understand, which media comes from the medium, right? The sorcery. And they understand that if they can get more out of the situation and get the protesting and the walking, then that fuels the media. So this is all the system kind of unfolding on itself. One situation erupts out of another situation. Out of that situation, another situation comes out of it. So you can clearly see how messed up this is. Viral video appears to show NYPD officer punch woman. Now, in the midst of all the equality, man and woman equal, man can do whatever a woman can do, woman could do what a man could do, all the equality somehow is always separated when it comes to man and woman. And then when a so-called black man gets out of control and loses it because he feels that justice is not being served, and if this was a so-called black man coming up swinging on this officer, probably wouldn't be there to, we know how that would have turned out. And then the media would say, unarmed black man. So we can see what is going to start happening. The whole police department is about to change. Everything is, you're seeing a shift. Everything is about to change. There's no way that any of these police that want to police cannot police at this point, whether it be somebody hitting on them or jumping on them. And then the woman that did it, the young woman, as he says, the young girl, 19-year-old girl, right, got off, right? But we've seen the injustice of police, what they do to young, so-called young black men who really could have avoided a lot of that. They just make something out of nothing. And they didn't have to do that. Just like this, she didn't have to do that. Didn't you know that this man was 300-something plus pounds? But they all figure, let me get some attention out of it. If I get hit, I could sue. People could say, hey, what you doing? The worst thing to be right now is a police and a teacher. Isaiah 3:19. 3, and looks like looks like 16. Moreover, the Lord saith, because the daughters of Zion are hardy, and walketh with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, which wanton goes back to unmerciful, right? Merciless, let me say that, and malicious, extravagant, of that nature. Okay? Walking and mincing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet. Right? Verse 19, I'm going to jump to 18. In that day the Lord will make away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments about their feet and their cowls, and their round tires like the moon, the chains and the bracelets and the mufflers and the bonnets and the ornaments of their legs and the headbands and the tablets. Right? You know, this is way back then. You could see these prophecies for real. And the earrings, they actually walk around with tablets now. The rings and the nose jewel, the changeable suits of apparel. Yep, we see that too. We see that the Queen of Heaven has managed to take the weakness out of Eve and made her strong. So this is why Eve can wear pants and nobody has a problem with it. Right? Eve could wear high-heel shoes. Eve could wear pants. Eve can even walk around with a purse, which men had. They changed everything. Right? But now they can walk around with purse, and then instead of the right attire, the pants. But then when a man wear a dress, which he shouldn't, he's embarrassed. It's the laughing stock. Or he's this way or that way, which he shouldn't. Man shouldn't be wearing a dress. But we see that same scenario with Eve. Then Eve shouldn't be wearing the pants. But anyway. Thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty in the war. And her gates shall lament and mourn, and she being desolate shall sit upon the ground. So this, you can see Babylon on its way out. Right? The daughters of Zion is haughty. Proverbs 7:11, she is loud and stubborn. Her feet abideth not in her house. Right? So we can clearly see you, Jakes. You think that you could control Eve in this society, and Eve is not even listening to the police. What chance do you think you got? And that's her protector. Right? Eve has zero control, zero fear. I don't care. I'm going to do what I want because I got all the simps around to accept me for behaving that way. Because I was told I'm equal and I could do what I want to do. So if you're equal, you should be able to be dealt with as an equal. But somehow the selective feminism flips on, and then all of a sudden I go back to feminine, I'm soft, and I don't know, woe is me. That's why when Jeremiah 4:30, I keep reading that. When that come to pass, that's going to be all you. You got Jakes just leaving Eve alone. The wicked Jakes getting locked up, they getting put away. Right? The other ones fleeing the country to get away from Eve. And the other ones just don't want to deal with them. So you can see how this is going to turn out for Eve in the long run. And the other nations that are here. You know, Edom is catching hell too with his sidekicks, so to speak. Right? So the mother says, you should have never knocked her daughter down that way. So my question is, and this is not just for police, this is just for anybody. Is anybody alive? See, police is only getting a fraction of what happened day to day with Jake. So is anybody supposed to stand there and let somebody constantly smack them because they're so much in a weaker state who's claiming to be on a level of equality to you? So that would be an analogy of a grown, big, strong, tall, grown man and a little small man. Now, the little small man with this big cop that's 5'5" and 130 pounds know not to come up and hit this big 6'4", 350-pound cop. A young man knows this. So you're going to tell me this fragile Eve that is has less so-called masculinity, well, you know, they may have some, but or less testosterone, is the weaker vessel, didn't know that, hey, I can go up here, that I shouldn't go up here and hit this big, overgrown, barbaric cop. Come on, man. Right? So she says she should have never knocked her daughter down that way. This is why they all played the victim. They ought to be good actors. Now they all out there telling the police what to do. They demand justice. The officers shouldn't do this. So you know what's going to happen, and this is what I said. The officers are going to eventually start saying the hell with it, man, and going to get fed up with this madness. Let's go to Lamentations 4. What is it, 4 and 3? It says, even the sea monsters draw out their breast, and they give suck to their young ones. The daughter of my people has become cruel, like ostriches in the wilderness. Like ostriches in the wilderness. Wow. The tongue of the sucking child cleaveth to the roof of his mouth for thirst. The young children ask for bread, and no man breaketh it unto them. This is why you see the youth in the condition that they're in. They're not getting fed the truth. They're not being nourished in the faith. And this is an example of what happens. You know, they that did feed delicately are desolate in the streets. They that are brought up in the scarlet embrace dunghills, for the punishment of the iniquity of the daughters of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom. So you can see how awful this thing is and how bad it's going to get, and the turn that's actually going to come, you know. So, you know, anyway, I don't want to make much out of this. Let me go to Titus 2 and 3. The aged woman, likewise, that they be in behavior as becoming holiness, not false accusers, not giving too much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young woman, and as he said, young girl. You know, when you are older, you do consider them as like young girls because they're very young. They that teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children. Now, what I noticed when I was out the other day, to be discreet, chase keepers at home, good, obedient to their husbands. Obedient goes to obey, that the word of Yahweh may not be blasphemed. So this is going to the sisters who know better. Them older sisters were supposed to be helping guide the younger ones, or let me say, guide their daughters. But what I seen today is the Eves walking, right? And with the little Eves is all dolled up, face shining. But the little Jakes, they don't look so good, man. Pants look old, shoes falling off, hair not brushed. It's an attack. And the problem is these Eves, the older ones too, man, some of them are the worst. They're teaching the young ones that madness and that behavior. And then they're putting that energy out onto the young men. And the young men are lost, not loved, hopeless. And then you got the rap music that's raising them. And then when the young men grow up and become crazy and out of control, the Eves step in and say, wait a minute, we need justice. We need to stop all this madness. Now, the whole point of what was going on in the video was this man was allegedly being locked up for having a ghost gun and, you know, one of those under the radar guns, and, you know, being taken off the street, because a lot of these Jakes should be taken off the street. But then here comes Eve jumping and flying into the rescue when we know damn well if this man gets some time, that Eve will be somewhere else, man. I don't know if it was a brother or whoever, but we know how it go. But nobody gives a damn about the young men. But now all of a sudden everybody cares about Eve and her, you know, her manly behavior and all the stuff that's going on. But they're equal. That's my whole point. They're equal. So if they're equal, don't they get equal pay? Don't they get equal judgment? We know they're not equal, but this is what society is pushing. If it wasn't for Jake keeping the roads going, the traffic lights going, the sewage going, the trash picked up, all the necessary things to keep this so-called Babylon going, and they catching all the hell. Jake is catching the hell. And these eaves will be a lift up on high. But yet they still complain. Anyway, that's all I have on that. Shalom.